First Book of Moses, Bereshith, Chapter 1, First Creation by Elohim. In the former time periods, as a powerful sign of working, chief son and heir Elohim filled with choice things, behold, as a sign Shemayim, the place of the names, and behold, as a sign Aratz, the chief place of running. But observe how Aratz was unorganized and empty, and Sheshach rose up from the deep waters, went up to its face, but the Ruach Elohim, as a wall of protection, moved violently upon the surface of the waters. Elohim then declared, light he will exist, and light he will exist. And Elohim gazed upon that beautiful light, and Elohim made distinctive the light from the darkness. And to the light Elohim called out the name Ya'um, and to the darkness he called out the name Leah Laha. This was the close and the dawn of the first age.
The Ketub Abarayath, or the Paleo-Hebrew, is a language over 5,000 years old. It chronicles a story branching forth from ancient time. His story, Yahweh. Walk into his story. Read the Paleo-Hebrew scriptures.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is the Unexpected Cosmology. That is the channel that you are watching right now. And I often wonder what that name, does it invoke anything within you? The Unexpected Cosmology. It was several years ago. I was sitting in this farmhouse in Ireland. The house is hundreds of years old. It was just almost heaven on earth, beautiful. Sheep everywhere, green pastures, wild berries, thick walls. The house apparently built for hobbits. And I was sitting there trying to put all these words together for originally the Unexpected Cosmology started as a book title. And I was talking to my buddy, Paulie Hart. I've had him on many times here. And of course, he's back in, I don't even know where he was living at that time. I don't think he was in Georgia at the time. And we finally settled on this title. And I love the idea that for me, the Unexpected Cosmology, it is undoubtedly, first and foremost, talking about Hebrew cosmology that nobody really saw coming, but it was here in front of us all along. And of course, there's an X for an X marks the spot in there in unexpected. But when we're talking about cosmology, we're talking not just about macro, but also the micro. With the macro and the micro, there are things in both cases. There are things that are either much larger or much smaller for the naked eye to see. It is a quest for the unseen things. A great example, perhaps, of the micro might be the human soul. You know, we could sit around asking the question, what is the human soul? I think, I believe the Greeks would say something like, the ancient Greeks would say something like, it is the whole man, right? It is the seen and the unseen man. The whole of us is the soul. And so one of the things that I love to do in this channel is to look at the way the ancients viewed scripture. I mean, we could look at it week after week from a modern 21st century lens, or even a 20th century lens, if you prefer that. Maybe your cup of tea is the 19th century. I don't really know. We could look at it from a modern Protestant lens. But when you actually look at how Christians perceive scripture thousands of years ago, hundreds, thousands of years ago, it can become a very jarring experience for a lot of people. As soon as people will start hearing me read from some of these books, they will overheat and they'll break down. And, you know, they're like like a broken robots and, you know, danger, Will Robinson, you know, they can't, in their minds, they just think that the way they have been taught things in their church is always the way they were believed, and that all the books should either, align with their worldview. Now, I'm not saying this to put anyone down or belittle anyone, but tonight I want to look at some of the mysteries of the Nativity and show you some textual evidence for how very early Christians took them to be. Believed the incarnation of Yahshua, as we would say in the Paleo, or Yeshua, as well as show you some very early belief for the perpetual virginity of the mother. Now, that is a very controversial topic. I'm not telling you what to believe on any of the stuff I'm going to show you tonight. But this is the unexpected cosmology, expect the unexpected. And I want to show you the kind of conversations that people would have had in the first, second, third century as they got together. So we, of course, are going through Paleo Matthew. If you don't know what that is, well, actually, darn, I don't have it in front of me right now. You can go to our store, and we are putting out the entire Bible. Our goal, translated through the Paleo. Now, when I say that, that confuses some people, because they'll write these comments, go like, but no, there's already Bibles out there. They have Paleo names in it. No, that's not what we're doing. We are not doing Paleo names. It's a very ambitious project. It's going to take, 10, 15 years. Who knows how long? It's taking multiple people, and Pamela is translating. We've got an editor and, different people on board with this. And we want to see the entire canon and some extra biblical books put out through the Paleo, which was the original language of the Bible. And I'm always amazed at how many people do not want the original language, the language that David wrote, the language that Moses wrote, the language that the prophets wrote. And Pamela is convinced that the language that Matthew wrote brought to the light of day. Why not? If you love the Bible, what's the problem? I don't know why so many people I get people even talk to me on the phone about this, like, that this needs to be shut down. Guys, it's coming out. It's coming out. The books are being unsealed. It's coming out. I'm excited, as excited as I am for a title like The Unexpected Cosmology, where X marks the spot. Now, the reason I guess you're looking at this here, I got an interesting question this last week, and somebody was asking why. Let me just show you here as we go through Matthew. I'm going to be showing you, I'm going to be reading to you from the Paleo. We're going through Matthew chapter for chapter. This is my third. Is this my third? Yeah, my third attempt, my third lesson on it. We finished chapter 1. And they asked, well, why do you have the KJV? You should be using like the Greek LXX. That was a really good question, and I appreciated it. And I might in the future, I might put the Greek LXX there. There's a very specific reason why I put the KJV. It's so that for those of you looking on screen, there's a lot of people who grew up with the KJV. I would imagine that if you grew up in any Protestant denomination, pick which one you want. Baptist, Episcopalian, whatever. Just pick it. Calvary Chapel, Seventh-day Adventist, Methodist, whatever. There's hundreds of them. That somebody in that church is going to be reading from the KJV. When the pastor's preaching, he's going to be checking what the pastor says according to his KJV. Or if you've been to a home Bible study, there's always that one guy, who rolls up like a tutor or whatever, speaking all Shakespearean, with his KJV. It's what we kind of are all accustomed to. That's why I choose it. However, I want to show you guys this really quickly. This is something we put out here at the Unexpected Cosmology. It's one of the ways you can support the ministry, but it's also this is a great teaching tool. It's a great study tool, something you can give to other people. You can lead studies with this. We have all 5 books of Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Of course, there'd be Bereshith, Shemawath, Kira'ah, Medabar, that'd be Numbers, and of course Dabarayam, that'd be Deuteronomy. And what the Torah portion study guide does is that it takes the entire each of those books of the Bible and lines up the KJV with the Greek LXX, with the Aramaic Targum, and the Paleo. So you have all 4 translations side by side, verse for verse. You can study the comparisons and the contrast, and make up your own mind on them, or use them for your enrichment. They definitely, I always wanted something like this, and nobody else was going to make it. So like, you know what? I'm going to make it because this is what I use these right here for my studying in front of, for you guys. So starting out tonight, I'm going to start right where we ended it. Where did we end it? We ended it with Joseph of Arimathea. Hold on here, guys. So here's some of the things I want to cover this week. Mystery of the wise men. Who were the wise men? Are they in any way connected with Nimrod? As many people suspect. I want to show you what textual evidence I can come up with. I want to look at the Star of Bethlehem, figure out what was going on with that and what some of the older sources have to say about it. I want to ask the question about the perpetual virginity of Mary, the mother of Yeshua. I get asked that a lot. Again, guys, I wasn't there, not to be crude, but I wasn't there to check. And I never grew up Catholic, but all I can do is show you some of the oldest texts we have, which predate the Catholic Church. And I can show you where they got this doctrine from. I'm pretty sure where they got it from. I'm going to show you tonight. We talk about the slaughter of the innocents and show you, ask, are they the 144,000? That is a Coptic tradition. Again, was there? I don't know, but I want to show it to you and ask if it ties into the resurrection. I want to look at what is Docetism. This is something that particularly fascinates me. And I think as controversial, if I were to just tell you what Docetism is, and I will, half of my own listeners will go, that's not right. That, I'm sure that's going to happen. But when I show you what texts this comes from, you'd be like, oh, I've been reading these all along and I didn't even think about it. Sometimes when you go to Wikipedia pages and you read about these doctrines, these ancient doctrines that are heresies, they're actually, they sound a lot scarier, believe me, than some of them are. Docetism. And maybe we'll get into the Mandela effect tonight. I don't know. That's just kind of if we're feeling a little extra frisky at the end and we don't make it. I get through all my material. No promises, though. And I want to ask the question tonight, is Joseph of Arimathea the father of Miriam? This is something that's going to come up a lot, particularly now that I'm traveling through Europe and I'm going to these different sites. And I just went to Glastonbury this last week or a little over a week ago. And I'm investigating a lot of Arthurian stuff and where Mary the mother ended up. I want to go where Mary Magdalene ended up, and investigate those places. And it's interesting because if you watched last week's presentation on the two genealogies as presented in Luke chapter 3 and Matthew chapter 1, what I showed you, and I is my theory, it's many people's theories. I was overwhelmed last week when I announced that I was going, like several hours before I went live, I announced what the topic was going to be. And I had all these people emailing me, oh, I hope you're going to cover this, 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 and this about the genealogy. And they were pretty much all on board. They pretty much all agreed that Matthew is not a literal father to son, to son, to son, to son. It is actually a king's list going all the way back to Abraham, king, who succeeded who. And it goes down to Joseph and then to Yeshua. And if this Joseph that is mentioned is indeed Joseph of Arimathea, not the husband, as many people suspect, that's pretty mind-blowing, considering that Joseph of Arimathea was very close friends with Pilate. He was like one of the chief of the Sanhedrin. The guy was very rich, very powerful. He had land in Britain. It explains a lot. And I don't think that this is I don't think Matthew is putting this together as some sort of like conspiracy theorist. I don't even, maybe he was just on the side, like a really good genealogist. Like that was like a hobby of his, how some guys are just into stamps and, maps or whatever. And he was just into genealogies. I personally think that they all knew, they all knew, like if they were going to set up the next son of David on the throne, they all knew and who it was. And maybe that actually plays into why there was such a big push among Yeshua's contemporaries to say that, he was a bastard son, illegitimate through, his mother was naughty, if you get the drift. All right, let's start reading this. And then I have plenty to say tonight. This isn't the, I think I read this whole chapter the first week, but we're going to do it again. And the coming forth of Yahshua existed in this way. And it occurred that when his mother was betrothed to Yahusaf, that would be Yosef, before he knew her, or her, she was discovered to be pregnant from the Ruach HaKodesh. And Yahusaf existed as a righteous man, and he did not intend to settle down to dwell with her, but did not wish to banish her, to bring her to shame, and not to bind her over to death. And isn't that interesting? I can't gloss right past that without mentioning that it explicitly mentions that Yosef was a righteous man. I grew up Protestant. Protestantism almost feels like a jarring experience to me now. The way I was raised and looking at this and going, this isn't what the Bible actually says. And I get people coming to me going, Noel, nobody is righteous. You can't be righteous. That's impossible. I'm like, well, that's not what the Bible says. His own father was righteous. He's listed right there. No, Jesus is not the only righteous one. There are others in the Bible who are righteous. Take that up, with the Bible, and not Noel. However, it existed that grieving, he wanted to make a covering over her. And as he meditated in his heart on the matter, that behold, a malach of Yahweh appeared toward him in a dream and declared, and of course, a malach is the word where we get angel from. It's a messenger, but clearly, I don't think this is like some, hitchhiker that just, appeared into his, I don't know, is he in his bedroom? I don't know where he is at this time. Clearly, this is an angel from heaven coming down, an agent of heaven coming down to declare. Appeared toward him in a dream and declared, Yahusaf ban Daoud. You see what he did there? So again, now to be fair, the way I'm reading this, that the way it just rolls over, it does seem like, as much as I know that there are some really good scholars out there that are pushing to make the Joseph in the Matthew list to be Joseph of Arimathea, I will be honest, I am a little biased. I do have a dog in the fight. I would like to see Joseph of Arimathea be in that list because of my Mary Magdalene research. But, it doesn't really, sometimes the way it rolls over, it feels like after you go through that genealogy and he specifically calls him a son of David. Of course, we know that Joseph was a son of David on Luke's list from Father, Son too. But we're talking context here. We're not referring to Luke when Matthew wrote this, all right? Yahusaf ban Daoud, you will not fear to take her as your covenant woman. She is pregnant from the Ruach HaKodesh, and she will bear a son, and she will call out his name Yeshua, for he will, Yeshua, excuse me, for he will deliver my people from their guilt contracted by sinning. All this completed what was written from the prophet upon the mouth of Yahweh. Behold, the damsel, she will conceive and she will bear a son, and you will call out his name, Emmanuel, which is Alakuyam, with us. And Yahusaf rose from his slumber, and he fashioned like all which the malach of Yahweh had commanded him. And he took her as his covenant woman, but he knew her not until she had brought forth her son, the firstborn, and he called out his name Yeshua. And it existed like this. Yeshua, and I'll say this every week, I don't know how far into Matthew this goes. I think I said this the last 2 weeks, but if anyone is tuning in for the first time, that is not a misprint there, not a spelling error where it says Yasha'u. I did speak to Pamela about this, and this is what I really respect about her translation. That most translators, they would just be like, no, I'm going to add an A there just because it's supposed to be there. She's like, look, it's not there in the document she's working with. It appears later, so she just spelled it as she saw it, and that's the way to do it. So, and we've caught that many times where I've shown that in other places where translators just across the board, they don't know what to do with a certain doctrine. It doesn't fit the worldview, so they just leave it out. And it existed like this. Yahshua was born in Beath Lakam, of course that's Bethlehem, of Yehuda, in the days of Herodes the king, and behold, seers and the stars came from the rising of the sun. I love that phrase there, that line, from the rising of the sun, unto Yerushalayim to declare, where is he, the one to be born, the Malach of the Yahudam, Dayam? We have observed his circuit in the rising of the sun and have come near with important gifts to bow down, giving homage unto him. And Herodes the king heard and responded, and he was startled, and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him. And he gathered together all his great ones, and he demanded from them if they knew in what standing place that the Messiah, or this year the Mashiach. I'm used to saying Mashiach, but probably the same. Would be born. And they responded toward him in Beth Lakam of Yehuda, as was written upon the mouth of the prophet, and you, Beth Lakam of Yehuda, place of Aparath, in the land of Yehuda. You who are little in Yehuda, from you shall come forth to me the one who shall exist to me a ruler in Yasharel. Then Herodes the king called out to the soothsayers in secret to ask at what time they had observed the star. And he sent them forth into Beth Lakam, and he declared toward them, walk and investigate well, treading about, seeking the boy. And upon your discovery of him, bring him forth to me, and I will also come toward him to bow down, doing homage. And they heard and responded toward the king, and they walked, and behold, the star which they had observed in the rising sun walked before their faces until they had come into the standing place. I will be talking about the star tonight, and I have heard many post-Newtonian, Copernican type of interpretations of this. And as far as I'm concerned, they all fall flat. I remember that really bothered me growing up. And I remember the Star of Bethlehem that appeared in 2014, 2015, went out and watched it. I think the last time I saw it was 2017. It was like for a few years, the alignment of the planets, not seeing it. Like this is specifically, this star is on the move. They are following. It's almost, I'm going to show you, it's almost like the star is conscious of them and they of the star. And it can be suggested as well that not everyone saw the star, which would explain a lot. And it literally stopped and stood over where they were supposed to go. And just as they came into Beth Lakam, it stood over against the standing place. There where the boy was, and it existed just as they had observed the star. They rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And they came toward the house, and they found him and Miriam, his mother, and they knelt before his face, and bowing down did homage to him. Then they opened to him their pouches, and they brought toward him gold and white frankincense and myrrh, which in a foreign barbarous tongue is myrrh. But being commanded in a dream from the Malach not to turn back towards Herodes, they returned to their land in another pathway. It was while they were walking to behold, the Malach of Yahweh appeared toward Yahusaph. Rise up, take the boy and his mother, and run away unto Mitzrayim. And stay there until I declare toward you, for Herodes will seek the boy to murder him. And he took the boy and his mother and existed there until the death of Herod, or Herodes, to complete what was said upon the mouth of the prophet. And from Mitzrayim I have called out to my son. When Herodes realized that the soothsayers had dealt unkindly toward him, and being very much grieved in his heart, then he commanded, and he sent forth word to all his noble princes to kill all the young boys which were in Beth Lakam and her borders, the ones born from the time which the soothsayers had declared to him the boy was born. So was made complete the words which were spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. We have heard a voice in Ramah wailing, bitter crying, Rachel mourning over her sons, and so on. And it existed that just as Herodes the king died, that Malach of Yahuwah appeared toward Yahusaph in a dream in Mitzrayim, which would be Egypt, to declare, rise up, take the boy and his mother, and walk toward the inhabited lands, for he is dead, the ones who trampled about seeking the boy for his death. And he, Yahusaph, rose up, and he took the boy and his mother, and he turned back toward the inhabited lands. But when he heard the Ha'urakunu'uz, his name is Aragiah, was Malach for his people in Yehuda, in his father's place, Herodes' stead, he, Yahusaph, feared to walk there. So he, being urged by the Malach in a dream, he turned his face toward the land of Galagal, And he came and he settled down to dwell in a city called Nazareth in order to confirm what was declared of the prophet, he shall be called a Nazarene. Now, every week I'm probably wrong about something. I mean, that, when you're going to talk for 2 hours, you can only give so much factual information before opinions kick in. And I was wrong. I had to fact check myself. I said that Jerusalem to Bethlehem would have been a day's journey. And I was wrong about that. It actually is less than half a day's journey. I decided to go to MapQuest. Now, keep in mind, you can see I don't know how closely you can see this map. If you can see the mouse, this is actually right here. This is Beit Jala, the modern town of Beit Jala. Bethlehem would be right down here. I think it's taking you to the Church of the Nativity. And I did spend some time in Beit Jala. I've given the story before. It was a Christian school, a private school. I'm not going to give you the name of it. I was there. It was right on the Valley of Elah, overlooking where David and Goliath battled. And I worked on a chicken farm there to raise money so that children could go to this school who were needy, who wanted to get a Christian education. This was like 25 years ago now. But I would drive in to Jerusalem, and it would take 20 minutes or something like that. And I was just figuring in my mind that it was, a whole day's journey back then. It wasn't. It was actually a lot less, which is actually far more, it actually proves my point way more. And it's very incriminating to all of Herod's religious advisors, who would have been probably the Pharisees. I'm sure he had the Sanhedrin in his pocket as well. And keep in mind that when the wise men came and they're like, look, we're following this star, it stands to question whether anyone in Judah saw the star. If they're like, you're crazy, we don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to show you a source that seems to infer that the wise men, it was unique to them, that they thought they were chosen to see it. But they knew exactly. I mean, they started spouting off scripture. They knew exactly where the Messiah was going to be born. They're like, he's going to be born right down the street. Like Herod, like just right down the street. And not one of them cared to go check. Just a 3-hour walk. Hey, honey, I'll be back by dinner. I'm just going to go down and check to see if the Messiah was born. The new king of Israel, right? Like the guy who's going to redeem us and save us from Rome, from the tyranny over us. Nobody was interested. And isn't that interesting? Hopefully I'm coming in clear for everybody. Yes, Don, don't forget to hit smash it, guys. Don't forget to smash the like button. So let's talk about this right here, the perpetual virginity and older siblings in the infancy gospel of James. Now, again, guys, I really like reading all these other books. I feel that they have given me a lot of not just knowledge, but wisdom. I've gleaned a lot of wisdom from them. And because of that, because they bring me so much joy reading them, I enjoy sharing them with you guys. So when people will say that the perpetual virginity of Mary, that she was forever a virgin, that is a purely Catholic doctrine that is not actually true. It did not start with the Catholic Church. I don't know if it started with the Orthodox Church, not really sure. But the Infancy Gospel of James was a highly popular book, telling us it was circulated. People were digging it. They were probably reading it on their Sabbath. And the modern day historians will say it's 2nd century. Look, if you can land in the 2nd century, you're doing pretty good. All right. I mean, we could all sit here and argue about the phantom time hypothesis, and how they were like spreading out like centuries, and we could really cram them together, which is I think we can do. Nevertheless, it was a very, very, very popular book. It is accredited to James, the older brother of Yeshua. Of course, his name would be Jacob. And this is what we read. I'm going to start in chapter 17. I'm just going to read a couple chapters of this. Some very interesting things in here. Then there was an order from Emperor Augustus to register how many people were in Beit Lechem of Yehuda. And Joseph said, I will register my sons. Okay, so already the narrative's a little different. Joseph isn't supposed to have any sons yet. But according to this, he's got any number of them. And he says, but this child, what will I do about him? This is the unborn baby in Miriam. How will I register him? Now he's already gone through the mourning process and all the different stages of shock and grief or whatever. And he's come to acceptance that this child truly is from the Ruach HaKodesh. He still doesn't know what to do with the child. And he's an old man, a widow. Oh, I am ashamed. Should I register as my daughter? He's speaking of Miriam there. The children of Yashruel know that she is not my daughter. This day I will do as Yahweh wants. Their marriage was very public. And it is interesting. Again, one of them is royal, right? Because Miriam, if Joseph of Arimathea is next in line to be king and he's still alive, he has no sons. He has, I think, 3 daughters that we can confirm. And Miriam is the oldest, and she was raised in the temple according to this. And so everybody would have known that she's on the king's list. Not that they necessarily had a monarchy, but her child, I mean, they would probably just jump over her, go from Joseph to Yahshua. On the flip, if it is Joseph, the husband, they all knew that they would all know that he is the next king of Israel. So this would have been known. It would have been super controversial. I think it was probably the gossip of the land. I mean, it followed Yahshua into his adulthood. We know that. And he saddled his donkey and sat her on it, and his son led, and Samuel followed. And they arrived at the 3rd mile, and Joseph turned and saw that she was sad. And he said to himself, perhaps the child within her is troubling her. So this book actually takes a couple what I would say almost sci-fi elements, which always excites me. Apocalypse of Abraham, as I've shown you, has one of the first sci-fi elements that I've ever seen in literature. And again, Joseph turned around and saw her laughing. So he turns around and sees her sad. I mean, obviously Joseph, he can't. It's kind of humorous because he's an old guy still trying to figure out the mystery of women, how, women have like all these things going on in their head at the same time. That's literally what's happening here. Like he could like feel the energy of her just thoughts, just like stabbing him, And again, Joseph turned around and saw her laughing. He said to her, Miriam, what is with you? First, your face appears happy and then sad. And she said, Joseph, it is because I see 2 people with my eyes, one crying and being afflicted, one rejoicing and being extremely happy. When they came to the middle of the journey, Miriam said to him, Joseph, take me off the donkey, the child pushing from within me to let him come out. So he took her off the donkey and said to her, where will I take you and shelter you in your awkwardness? This area is a desert. And he found a cave and lit her there and stationed his sons to watch her, while he went to find a Hebrew midwife in the land of Beet Lechem. Then Joseph wandered, but he did not wander. Now, the first time I read that, I'm like, what do you mean he wandered, but then he did not wander? What did that mean? So before I read you the next paragraph, just so you can maybe preemptively picture this in your head, I was trying to think of like a movie allegory. I think if you saw the recent Flash movie, which a lot of people would say was an abomination, but if you saw the latest Flash movie, I think there was a scene where like he's kind of like running so fast that he's like outside of time, and you could see like everybody kind of standing there in place, not moving, and you like think of a situation where if you could go outside of time and you could just see like a drop of water go like this, just really slowly like this, right? And someone's like yawning and yeah, like 1 second of time takes a minute. That's what this scene describes. This is why I said this is one of the first science fiction elements in literature that I can find. And again, this is Jacob, the Just, James the Just, the later leader of Jerusalem that's describing this. And he says, and I looked up to the peak of the sky and I saw it standing still. And I looked up into the air. With utter astonishment, I saw even the birds of the sky were not moving. And I looked at the ground and saw a bowl lying there and workers reclining. And their hands were in the bowl. And chewing, they were not chewing. And picking food up, they were not picking it up. And putting food in their mouths, they were not putting it in their mouths. Rather, all their faces were looking up. and I saw sheep being driven, but the sheep were standing still. And the shepherd lifted up his hand to strike them, but his hand remained above them. And I saw the rushing current of the river, and I saw goats and their mouths resting in the water, but they were not drinking. And suddenly everything was replaced by the ordinary course of events. So all of a sudden, it's like everything's still, and it's like just it goes back. This is such a cool scene because what they're describing, guys, is the moment that Yahweh is incarnate and he steps into time, and he becomes the baby. He's born. Well, I mean, he was already in the womb, but I guess you could say the moment he steps out of the womb. You'll see what I mean by this. This is another of the sci-fi elements here. Not to spoil the ending, but he's not born through the natural way, through the woman's woohoo. He was in the womb, and then he's not doing like a tap dance, like the frog from Spaceballs, but he's just there. I mean, he's a baby, and he's just like goo goo gaga, right? Here I am. And the way it depicts this is almost like if he wanted to. This gets into the Docetism, by the way. Like he could have talked if he wanted to. So the midwife went with him, and they stood near the cave. I'm sorry, I skipped the whole paragraph here. So this also is strange because this one paragraph, and I don't know what's going on here. It switches the narrative all of a sudden. It's almost like Jacob got his father's testimony. He got him to write it down. He's like, okay, you went running off to see the midwife, because I'm sure they talked about this. And when you went off to see the midwife, this is what I experienced. Time stood still, and you stood still. So when you went to get the midwife, what happened? Because I'm telling you what happened, while you're gone. So, and this is Joseph's kind of his testimony inserted into this paragraph. And he said, and I saw a woman coming down from the mountain, and she said to me, man, where are you going? And I said, he probably looked, like a man when his wife is in labor. He probably looked quite confused and maybe delirious. And I said, I am seeking a Hebrew midwife. In replying, she said to me, are you from Yasharel? And I said to her, yes. Then she said, and who is giving birth in the cave? And I said, the one who has pledged, I mean, probably a very strange place to give birth, right? The one who has pledged to be married to me. And she said to me, she's not your wife? And I said to her, she is Miriam, the one who was raised in the temple. I won her by lotto to be my wife. She is not yet my wife, because they're, of course, betrothed, but has a fetus from the Ruach HaKodesh. And the midwife said, really? And Yosef said to her, come and see. So the midwife went with him. So now it's going back to Yaakov's testimony. And they stood near the cave, and a dark cloud was hovering over the cave. And the midwife said, my soul glorifies this day, for today my eyes have seen a miracle. Salvation has come to Yasharel. And immediately the cloud withdrew from the cave, and a great light appeared in the cave, so that their eyes could not bear it. I almost wanted, I'm not going to for lack of time, but you see another birth like this with multiple sources in the book of Enoch when Noah is born. This seems to mirror the birth of Noah, where he too came out as a shining, glimmering white light, white skin, white light, white hair as well. And he came out actually singing too, which is interesting. And a little while later, the same light withdrew until an infant appeared, and he came and took the breast of his mother, Miriam. So you see what happened there? The way it's written, Yaakov is like, my mom didn't take the child and bring it up to her breast. It seemed like the child took. Now, he says, and he came. I guess if he didn't write that, you could say the mom offered the breast and he took the breast. But it says, and he came and took the breast of his mother, Miriam. And the midwife cried out and said, how great this day is for me, for I have seen this new miracle. And the midwife departed from the cave and met Salome and said to her, Salome, Salome, I have to describe this new miracle for you. A virgin has given birth, although her body does not allow it. So keep in mind what we're dealing with here. When people say the virgin birth, technically you couldn't call it a virgin birth I almost feel like Christianity, if they're not going to accept this narrative, maybe they need to change their language use around a little bit, because if the baby is coming through down the chute, you could no longer prove that she's a virgin, right? So there'd be blood and everything. It's over. Like, she's no longer quote unquote a virgin. You can never prove it. So it would not be a virgin birth per se, at least not provably in court. It would be a virgin conception. Those are two different things, right? But according to this, it was a virgin conception and a virgin birth. And Salome said, as Yahuwah my Elohim lives, unless I insert my finger and investigate her, I will not believe that a virgin has given birth. So the midwife went in and said, Miriam, position yourself, for not a small test concerning you is about to take place. And, if she fails this test, there's going to be accusations, right? When Miriam heard these things, she positioned herself, and Salome inserted her finger into her body. And Salome cried out and said, woe for my lawlessness and the unbelief that made me test the living Elohim. Look, my hand is falling away from me and is being consumed in fire. Now, I don't know if it really was, but I'm sure that this is her giving, I'm sure for her hand was very much writhing away and on fire. It probably felt that way to her. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. This is, of course, Yaakov writing down what people are saying, right? And Salome dropped to her knees before Yahuwah, saying, Elohim of Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, do not expose me to the children of Yasharel, but give me back to the poor. For you know, Adonai, I don't know if that should say Yahuwah there. I just put Adonai in kind of italics, that I have performed service and received my wage from you. Suddenly an angel of Yahuwah appeared, saying to her, Salome, Salome, Yahuwah of all has heard your entreaty. Stretch out your hand to the child and lift him up, and he will be salvation and joy for you. And Salome went to the child and lifted him up, saying, I worship him because he has been born a king to Yasharel. And at once Salome was healed and left the cave justified. Suddenly there was a voice saying, Salome, Salome, do not proclaim what a miracle you have seen until the child comes to Jerusalem. There could be good reasons for that, right? Because the angel knows that they don't want the baby killed. Now, Yosef was about to depart to Yehuda when there was a great commotion in Beit-Lechem of Yehuda, for astrologers had come, saying, where is the one who has been born king of the Yahudim? For we saw his star in the east and came to worship him. So keep in mind I'm trying to figure out the timing on this, right? Because are they going to the temple? Is this for his 8th day to have him circumcised? Did they already go to Jerusalem and come back? Is this like a couple years later or a year later? Or did the wise men arrive in the first week? I don't really have the timing on this down. But anyways, astrologers have come saying, where is the one who has been born king of the Yahudim? So these astrologers came, they stirred up trouble, and they had to have known what they were doing. I'll show you why. For we saw his star in the east and came to worship him. And when Herod heard, he was shaken up and sent servants to the astrologers. And he also sent for the high priest and questioned them in his place, saying to them, what has been written about this, about the Mashiach? Where will he be born? And they said to him, in Beit-Lechem of Yehuda, for so it has been written, and he let them go. And amazingly, again, in both accounts, nobody is interested except for the Magi, who've come all the way out from the place of the rising sun. They've come a long ways. Nobody else is interested. And he questioned the astrologers, saying to them, what sign did you see about the one who has been born king? And the astrologers said, we saw a star shining with incredible brilliance amidst the constellations and making them seem dim. And so we knew that the king had been born in Yasharel, and we came to worship him. This gives us a little piece of information. I 2 weeks ago, if you watch that one, I did the whole thing on the prophecy of the virgin birth and the stars. And this is why you see the Lady and the Madonna all over the world, all the way going back to Babylon and Egypt. They were looking at the same constellation of the Madonna and the Child, which is in Virgo as well. It's one of the other constellations in there. And this gives us a piece of information. They say that the star was in the constellations. So again, probably in Virgo. And secondly, that it was so bright that it made the night sky seem dim. It would almost be like you had, like when you have a full moon and it's not very good for looking up at the stars on those nights. The same thing. It seemed like the star was so bright that it blinded the other stars, and we'll be looking more at that tonight. And Herod said to them, "Go and search. If you find him, report to me so that I also may come and worship him." And the wise men departed. Then the star which they had seen in the east led them until they came to the cave and stood over the head of the child. Yeah, I mean, again, this doesn't, to me, that this seems like this star is a living conscious entity. It's almost like an orb, almost like I almost picture this bright orb kind of coming down and going right over the cave. And when the astrologers saw him with his mother Miriam, they took gifts out of their bags, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned by the angel not to go into Yehuda, they returned to their country by another road. When Herod saw that he had been tricked by the astrologers, he flew into a rage and sent his executioners, telling them to destroy all the infants that were 2 years old or younger. So again, this doesn't give clarity on the timeline. Did the wise men appear within a year or two or not? Was it the first week? Don't really know. And when Miriam heard that all the children were being destroyed, she was afraid and took the child and wrapped him up. Get this like blew my mind when I first read this. She took the child and wrapped him up and put him in a stall of cows. She wrapped him up in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger. I know it doesn't say manger right there, but it's a stall of cows, guys. She laid him in a stall of cows. Okay. I've often wondered, like, why in the world you would have a newborn baby. I mean, if my child is born in a barn, keep in mind my daughter Rivka, she's going to be 3 in a couple months. She was born in our RV by choice. We drove out to the woods in Missouri, and my wife spent her last trimester there. And by choice, just outside of Springfield, Missouri, she was born there. Now, if there were cows around us, awesome. There might, there weren't, but I don't think my first thought would be, I'm going to wrap up the child in some beautiful blankets and then lay it in a feeding trough. I don't see it. I'm not necessarily questioning. I guess I am. I mean, I grew up my whole life going, that's kind of strange. And if it happened, it happened. Cool. But when I first read this, I'm like, that makes sense. That makes sense. She's hiding. There's dudes coming with spears and swords down the street, and they're breaking in doors and they're killing babies. And just like Miriam with Moses, who had to hide him in a basket and send him down the Nile River, same thing is happening right here. She's putting him in a manger, probably covering him up with hay or whatever. And those soldiers break in, they look around, and they're like, no baby here, and they move on out. For all I know, the cows were eating out of the stall, right? It would be good camouflage. And when Elisheva, this is Elizabeth, heard that Yochanan was being sought, so this is her child, right? John the Baptist, she took him and headed for the hills. We never hear about this story in the Gospels, do we? He was born about the same time. He would have been hunted down as well. And she looked around to find where she could hide him, but there was not any good place. Then as Elisheva sighed, she said with a loud voice, "Mountain of Elohim, take me, a mother with a child," for Elisheva was too afraid to go up higher. I get the sense here that she's holding this baby. She's running into the night, and she's probably being pursued. She could probably see the torches or whatever behind her. Soldiers are coming, hunting her down. They're going to kill her. They're going to overrun her. She's exhausted. She can't go any further. And look what happens. And at once the mountain split open and received her, and there was light shining through the mountain to her. For an angel of Yahuwah was with them, guarding them. I personally suspect that when Yahshua said that, we could move mountains, he was referring to this story. He would have grown up, with Mary and Elizabeth getting together, rehearsing the story, because that's what moms do every birthday, right? I know he didn't have birthdays, right? But every year they get together and they talk about what it was like going through labor or whatever. And of course, Miriam had a great labor. Apparently, she did not travail. And Messiah would have been well aware of this. Been like, yeah, it's just happened to my cousin John Yochanan, and if you have that faith and you're in distress, he will do this for you too. I've even covered this in the 66 to 70 AD timeline when Yahshua said, "Flee to the hills," and I personally think, I do think that the amount of olives there may have split open. I think they could have just run right through. I think it would have been the sign for everybody there, and they didn't take it. Or the people, obstinately, they're like, I'm not doing that, because that's, Yahshua's prophecy. I'm not doing that. But Herod continued seeking Yochanan, and he sent his servants to Zechariah at the altar. So Zechariah here, this is John the Baptist's father, saying to him, "Where did you hide your son?" But he replied, saying to them, "I am here as a servant of Allah and am serving in his temple. How should I know where my son is?" And his servants departed and reported to him all these things. Outraged, Herod said, "Is his son destined to rule Yasharel?" And he sent his servants again, saying to him, "Tell me the truth. Where is your son? Do you know that your blood is under my hand?" And the servants departed and reported these things to him. And replying, Zechariah said, "I am a witness of Allah. Have my blood. Yahuwah will receive my ruach, because you are shedding innocent blood at the entrance of the temple of Yahuwah." And around daybreak, Zechariah was murdered, even though the children of Yasharel did not know that he had been murdered. Then at the hour of greeting, the priest departed, and the blessing of Zechariah did not greet them as usual. Expecting him, the priest waited to welcome him with prayer and to praise the Most High Allah. And when he failed to come, they were all afraid. One of them courageously went into the sanctuary and saw hardened blood next to the altar of Yahuwah, and heard a loud voice saying, "Zechariah has been murdered, and his blood will not be wiped away until vengeance comes." I have to wonder how many times they were actually hearing voices from under that altar. I don't think that was a one-off at all. I think there was probably, this is the temple of Yahuwah. I think miraculous things were happening there. And I say that because Josephus records the same thing in 66 AD, that all the voices cried out, and they were, he called them the gods, the Elohim, and they were released from under the altar. And when he heard these words, he was afraid and went out and told the priests what he had seen and heard. And gathering up their courage, they went in and saw what had happened. And as the panels of the temple cried out, they ripped the robes from the top down, and they did not find the corpse, but they found his blood, which had turned to stone. That's interesting. I never really picked up on that before. And fearing, they went out and reported to the people that he had been murdered. And all the tribes of the people heard, and they mourned and wept for 3 days and 3 nights. Then after 3 days, the priests deliberated about who they should appoint to take the place of Zechariah. And the lot went to Shimon, for he was the one to whom it had been revealed by the Ruach HaKodesh that he would not see death until he saw the Mashiach in the flesh. Yaakov, wrote the history when there was unrest in Jerusalem at the time Herod died. I took myself into the desert until the unrest in Jerusalem ceased. All the while, I was glorifying Allah, who gave me the wisdom to write this history, and grace will be with all who fear Yahuwah. Amen. And I think that just answered my question. I said it on live tonight about asking questions about the timetable when the wise men arrived. It appeared they arrived in the first few days before they went to Jerusalem to have him circumcised. So there's that right there. So let's talk a little bit about the mother's lamb at the slaughter of the innocents. And I want to give you guys a few different variable church traditions on this. I don't think I'm going to read this for you tonight. This is well, actually, no, I'm going to read this one. There's another poem after this I'm not going to read. This is an Irish poem. It's part of the Irish Apocrypha, which is really fun. I've never read this before. It's called The Mother's Lament at the Slaughter of the Innocents. And it has, it's kind of like, it's dark, obviously, because, it's a horrible thought. Mothers having their babies ripped from their breasts and slaughtered. But it almost has like a little bit of Irish humor to it in a way. Then as she plucked her son from her breast for the executioner, one of the women said, "Why do you tear from me my darling son, the fruit of my womb? It was I who bore him. He drank my breast. My womb carried him about. He sucked my vitals. He filled my heart. He was my life. 'Tis death to have him taken from me. My strength has ebbed. My voice has stopped. My eyes are blinded. Then another woman said, it is my son you take from me. I did not do the evil, but kill me. Me, don't kill my son. My breasts are sapless. My eyes are wet. My hands shake. My poor body totters. My husband has no son, and I no strength. My life is worth death. Oh, my one son, my God. His foster father has lost his hire. My birthless sicknesses with no requital until doom. My breasts are silent. My heart is wrung. Then said another woman, I almost wonder if this is probably read in churches, but I almost wonder if they had like different parts for people to read. Different women in the congregation would recite this. Because then another woman said, ye are seeking to kill one, ye are killing many. Infancy slay, fathers ye wound, you kill the mothers. Hell with your deed is full, heaven shut. You have spilt the blood of guiltless innocents. And yet another woman said, O Christ, come to me. With my son, take my soul quickly. O great Miriam, mother of the Son of God, what shall I do without my son? For thy son, my spirit and my sense are killed. I am become a crazy woman for my son. After the piteous slaughter, my heart's a clot of blood from this day till doom comes. All right. So the slaughter of the innocents and the 144,000. Now I've shared this painting. It's a Renaissance painting often, usually when talking about pre-existence. I will tell you guys that I used to be really annoyed by cherub babies. Not that, cherub babies did me any wrong. I don't think I really have a beef with cherub babies, but I think that, because I've done a lot of research on the history of angels and how they're perceived. I was just in the British Museum a couple weeks ago and documented a lot of stuff I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys and showing how the medieval Christian idea of angels, you guys can all picture what they look like. That goes all the way back to Babylon, through Greece. They all showed them the same way. And I think there was a legitimacy to that. And then it all started changing as soon as you get to the Renaissance. The Renaissance, not really the Reformation, but in the Renaissance, all of a sudden they went to these cherub babies. I'm like, what in the world's going on? I go to all these Gothic cathedrals, and they're these beautiful Gothic places, and the Reformation people, the Renaissance people, they're both capital R's, same time. The Renaissance people showed up and put naked babies everywhere. But now I'm kind of starting to appreciate it from a kind of another esoteric perspective and thinking, maybe I need to let them speak for themselves. And maybe something was going on at that time where they had this desire to put all these babies everywhere. What was going on at the time? And does it speak to another reset of whatever, pre-existence, whatever, what have you? Anyways, you can see right here that okay, I spent way too much time on this week. Hours. It drives me crazy as a researcher when people come to me all the time and they just they'll tell me this piece of information. It just, whatever. It could be anything. Just make it up in your head right now, just a piece of information. And I'd be like, okay, where are you sourcing that from? Because I do. I want it. I'm the kind of guy, when I read wiki articles, that I go to all the sources underneath and I will read the books that refer to other books, and I'll just keep reading the books. I like the footnote stuff, right? I want to read the original source and see what they were saying. And I can rarely get people are like, well, I don't know. It's just something I heard one time on YouTube. And I'm like, okay, well, what channel? Do you have a video? I can't remember the video, but it's on their channel. Go check it out. And I'll go look, and they have 700 videos are 4 hours long each. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not watching all that just to find this one little factoid. It was like this with this. So what you read right here, I just pulled this quote from Wikipedia, and this is what it says. The Byzantine Rite liturgy, that's something right there, asserts that 14,000 holy innocents were killed at this time. Speaking of Herod's annihilation of babies. Well, an early Syrian list of saints, there's something else. I spent hours trying to find that. Couldn't find it. Drove me crazy. An early Syrian list of saints asserts 64,000. The Coptic sources, I was successful at this, and I'll show you, assert that 144,000 were killed, and that it took place on the 29th of December. My understanding with the Catholic and maybe the Orthodox Church is that they say it happened on the 28th of December, which is kind of interesting. That was the day I was born. So I would love to find this early Syrian list of saints. I looked at Byzantine rites. I wasn't finding that information. I probably found 30 or 40 websites. They all just copy and paste this as a fact. And is it a fact? I don't really know. Just because people say it over and over again doesn't make it true. But this is right here. This is the Coptic Orthodox calendar, third Topa, the third day of the blessed month of Tuba. And not going to read the whole thing, but I did highlight this right there. They gathered 144,000 children in the hands of their mothers. And then they tie this into Revelation. They say St. John the evangelist said in Revelation that he saw under the altar the souls of those children that had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, "How long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth?" Now, interestingly enough, there is a connection here with what we just read in the Infancy Gospel of James. Remember when John the Baptist's father is killed there at the altar, the voice cries out from under the altar. Then we see the voice of the 144,000 crying out from under the altar. And I already told you what Josephus said about the voices under the altar. So there is a connection there. All right. I'm not sure I'm convinced of the Coptic argument. Keep in mind that as you're going through history, however, everyone listening, you all have different views of how we can track history and what is to believe. But the fact of the matter is, you have the Orthodox, the Catholic, and the Coptic, probably a few others. They all have different traditions. Which one do we go with if we're going by traditions or research, right? And then they say this: a white robe was given to each of them, and it was said to them that they should rest a little while longer until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren who would be killed as they were was completed. That right there is not helping their argument, because I thought they were already dead. So clearly it wasn't 144,000 babies that were killed under Herod, because according to Revelation, they were still being killed. I have people come tell me that John the Baptist wrote Revelation. I'm waiting for the evidence on that. I'll listen to that, but I don't see it at all. And then they say that St. John also said also that the new song that the four living creatures and the elders were singing, no one could learn except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth, who were not defiled with women, for they were virgins. They follow the Lord, the Lamb, wherever he goes, and he wipes every tear from their eyes. All right. I'm not going to commit a whole study tonight on the 144,000. Many of you know, to probably many people's frustration, I wrote a whole paper on this theme here where it says they're virgins. I mean, if they're babies, it's like, no duh, of course they're virgins. It's pretty scary if they're not. Like, you don't even need to say that. Why even imply that they're virgins if they're babies? Secondly, I will say against this theory that I am not fond of cross-referencing Matthew with Revelation. I'm fond with cross-referencing the Torah with Matthew, or the Torah with Revelation, or the prophets, anything that was established at that time. But in the first century, which was a chaotic time by all analysis, like, John isn't writing his gospel comparing. There's no evidence he's comparing with what Matthew and Mark is. Like, he's not going to source something that he himself did not source in the Gospel of John. If the 144,000 are these babies, why didn't John bring it up in his gospel? Say, at the very beginning, oh, by the way, there was these babies that were killed, and there was 144,000 of them. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not real fond of this theory. Nevertheless, it's a big, the Coptic church still has influence, and they've always been kind of silent on the world scene, kind of like the Orthodox. One of the things I like about them, they're not like world stage people, if you get my wink, wink drift. So of course, to many people's, I'm going to give you a blank screen for a minute. To many people's frustration, I inferred or suggested that the 144,000 are women. They're not dudes. And I have stated specifically that the word that is used here is betula. Betula it only ever in scripture refers to a woman that is set aside from sexual intercourse. It doesn't mean virgin in the way we describe virgin today in the Western world, where you lose your virginity, you can never get it back. You can actually reclaim your betula status. You can be married and have children, and then become a widow and become a betula. And the first betula we see in scripture is Rivka or Rebecca, as she comes down to the well, and Eliezer, Abraham's servant, is there, and he goes up and talks to her. So if the 144,000 are dudes, it's the first time in biblical history, not just canon, but biblical history, that we can find where they use betula to describe men. You see what I'm saying? A lot of people don't like that. But it is what it is. And I have actually found this isn't being talked about amongst the scholars and the historians. But what I'm looking at, and even what I'm seeing in Europe now, it seems like there's a big tradition across the board that seems to be silent now, that the 144,000 were women. Seems to be very, very common, and I have read it in their text as well. I actually think that's where the nun system came out of, the Brides of Christ. Anyways. But let's just set that aside for a second. Let's set the betula aside. Let's set the Coptic tradition of the 144,000. And to remind you, it's interesting that the Byzantine, this would be the Orthodox Church, they claim that there was 14,000. So it's 1 short that were killed on that day. Let's just take this in context of Revelation, right? Because I see no reason to borrow from Matthew. If we can find it in Torah, great. But I think that in his own book, he actually describes what the 144,000 are. Just face value, just using a little math, just get out the calculator. So the number 144,000 is derived from 12, representing the 12 tribes of Israel, multiplied by 12, the 12 apostles, and then by 1,000, which would be the millennial kingdom. Well, how did I come up with that very simple math? Just looking at these passages right here, Revelation chapter 6. And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain by the word of God and for the testimony which they held. Again, that is an interesting connection with Zechariah, who was John the Baptist's father, being slain there. Interesting connection. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, "How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth?" And white robes were given unto every one of them, and it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. This also, by the way, doesn't seem to line up with the timeline of at least what I've put together. And if anyone wants to challenge this, feel free to do so. We could all learn from each other. But I put forward that the resurrection happened in 30 AD ish, when Yahshua personally led them up to paradise. He went down to Sheol, brought them up. I don't know why the 144,000 babies, these cute little cherub babies, would still be separated from the bunch. Why didn't they just go to Sheol? Why were they resurrected? We get no context on that. This seems to me, as I have mentioned, that for whatever reason, there's a holding cell for these people that are killed as martyrs, that they're set aside until they are brought into the heavenly court or whatever. Well, looking at chapter 14, Revelation 14, it says, and they saw, okay, and I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000. I guess I should have highlighted that right there, having his father's name written in their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. Some people say that's a Mandela effect. It's pretty funny. Harpers harping with their harps. I think Pamela would say that's a very Hebrew line. And they sung, as it were, a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders, and no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. Oh my goodness! I just thought of the rondeau, the carol, whatever. I see a update to that paper coming. I'm not going to tell you the context on that if you don't know what it is. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the firstfruits unto God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. And then we see this in Revelation 21. So this is, so, okay, so we got this, we got the 144,000, established that, right? Here's what we see in Revelation 21, and they'll read Revelation 20 after that. And he carried me away to the Spirit to a great and high mountain. By the way, when people talk about New Jerusalem, they always forget that part about the great high mountain. They kind of use this like for a flat Earth cosmology idea, that he's standing on a high mountain and he could see so far out from this high mountain. I'm telling you right now, even if you stood on Everest, you're not seeing it. Actually, this passage completely proves the flat Earth, Hebrew cosmology, biblically. And I've already given that. If you look at my Phoenix presentation, where I talk about the very high wall, the mountain that is above every mountain in our realm, that's where it is, right? So this is what he's saying, this high place that is above everything in our own realm, but it is terrestrial. And he showed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from Allahayam, having the glory of Allahayam, and her light was like unto a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. It had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates. Okay, so these 12 gates, and as you guys know, it says right here that on these, written thereon, were the 12 tribes of the children of Yasharel. So there are the 12 tribes that I mentioned. And you go down, we see that it has 12 foundations, which I always think that's interesting, that from a pre-existence perspective, that below the patriarchs are the 12 apostles of the Lamb. So you got the 12 and 12 right there. And you get this, Revelation 20, and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahshua. So that's the qualification for the 144,000, and for the word of Allahayam, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Mashiach for 1,000 years. It's almost like a Job scenario where they're given, Job is given a double portion. They're given much more than a double portion. I haven't done the math on that to figure out, the generation, what the expectancy of a generation. And don't make me do that math. But there you have it right there, 1,000, 12, and 12. There it is right there. There's your 144,000. Contextually within Revelation, babies are not included in the story. Now, when you go to Bethlehem, like I said, I have very pleasant memories of being in Bethlehem when I was a young man, over a few months working on, and I would, it was very safe back then. This is when Pope John Paul II came and visited, and Ariel Sharon, and what was the leader of the Palestinians, was Arafat, whatever. They were meeting, and there was all these peace talks, and there was this hope for the future, and then it all went downhill, and they built the wall, and it went to hell. But back then it was very safe, and Bethlehem was a Christian community, and I would go out late at night walking down the streets. Maybe it's because I was young, and I didn't think about things like you do now with my family, but I always felt very safe, never any issues. It's completely different now. And there is in the Church of the Holy, the Basilica of the Nativity, there is of course you go down, you go into the cave where they claim that he was born. And keep in mind that this is one of the oldest churches in Christendom by records. I always wonder when, just be kind to everyone out there, because I know it's growing considerably. I'm not trying to step on any toes. I would love to bring you guys on my channel and we could talk about this, but this whole idea that Israel is somewhere else, I always wonder, like maybe it's America. Some people say it's Europe. Some people say it's Africa, whatever. Different places. I haven't heard Australia yet. I'm still waiting on that one. But at what point in history did this swap happen? Because when you look at like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Basilica of the Nativity, they go way, way back, just in records, historical, archaeological. And there is the Chapel of the Holy Innocents. I have been there. It is closed most of the time. But when you I was able to see this. It's very hard to see because it's this hole in the wall, and you kind of have to. I'm a tall guy, I'm just above average, I think. But I kind of have to. I remember I had to kind of look up and over to into this hole to see it, and they have it lit. But you can see all these bones of little infant boys. Apparently, I think they've been tested, and they no girls among them. They're just all little boys. So the next question is if they claim, the claim is that in this very historical old church that they did a mass burial of all these boys that were slaughtered. They just gathered the babies, and they you could see some of their skulls are broken, crushed open, like they were thrown on rocks. I mean, very, very disturbing. But even more disturbing would be if these are not the babies that were killed during the Nativity. And then you have to ask the question, where did they get all these baby boy bones? That's a whole different story right there. I mean, I know that people are like, oh yeah, sure, these are the actual babies, oh sure, we have that evidence. But it's like, okay, fine, if you don't believe it, then you need to ask the next very uncomfortable question about how they acquired all these baby bones. There's a lot of them down there. And the next thing that is on my mind a lot is if we're talking about the resurrection having already happened. My apologies for anybody who's stepping into this conversation afresh and you're like, what kind of Bible study is this? But assuming that the resurrection, that the millennial kingdom has already happened, that there has been 1,000 years, the 144,000 reigned, it means that the first resurrection has happened. And I've covered this extensively. And nearly everybody, this is where I've stated, I said this just last night, that we come into this with these preconceived notions. Most of the time, these preconceived notions is, because we come out of evangelical society. Well, it could be Catholicism or anything like that. And we are told that the resurrection of the dead is purely physical, not spiritual, and that any other view is Gnostic. And I disagree with that. And I've pulled up textual evidence, which I believe says otherwise. And I will clarify every time I bring this up that it is very clear that Yahshua physically resurrected. That was prophesied in Psalms. Peter says it in, I think it's Acts chapter 2 on the day of Pentecost. And he's like, look, David wrote this and his body did not see decay. And that's very important to the resurrection story. But I've also shown you in past weeks, just recently, that like the Gospel of Nicodemus gives a lot of way too, how at the crucifixion of Messiah, you have all these people coming out of the tombs. They physically resurrected and they became these spirit bodies that then they didn't die afterwards. I know we've been taught that. That's not true. They ascended to heaven afterwards. They were like the first fruits that went up. But then you have all these other people that resurrected, and they just went to heaven. They went from death to life. That sounds like resurrection to me. I mean, we could, say it's a tomato issue, but you're coming from death to life. They were resurrected, but not in physical form. They had a spiritual body. They never went back for their bones. And so I'm putting out there the possibility that we can find some of the bones of the saints, and that's okay. All right. So I'm just saying that these children would have been resurrected by now. They never went back for their bones. I'll give you a couple of examples. All right. Just something to think about. And this isn't really an issue, hopefully, of Noel says versus the word of God. I'm just going to show you this. You come to your own decision. If you disagree with me, cool. We can still be friends. Let's go out and get some coffee. Let's go, get some beer or smoke a cigar or whatever and talk about it. Now, this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of Elohim, neither does corruption inherit corruption. That's a Paul quote right there. Am I cherry picking? Maybe. Why not? The Pollyanna does it all the time. So if they get to cherry pick Paul, I'm going to do it too. Gospel of John says this, chapter 5. Amen, amen, I say to you, he that hears my words and believes on him that sent me has everlasting life and shall not come into condemnation. He is passed from death unto life. Amen, amen, I say to you, the hour is coming, now is, when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of Elohim, and they that hear shall live. For as the Father has life in himself, so he is given to the Son to have life in himself. And I believe that he's saying that the hour has already come, guys. So 2,000 years later, what does he mean by an hour here? Because I mean, I'm looking at my wristwatch. I'm looking at 60 minutes, right? An hour, the hour has come. You could even maybe stretch an hour out to that generation if you want. I don't, I would say the next generation would definitely be another hour at that point. And it happened. It happened when he went down to Sheol. They dead saw life. They resurrected. All right. So, and they didn't come back for their bodies. It says this in the Gospel of Philip. Those who say that Adonai first died and then was resurrected are wrong, for he was first resurrected and then he died. If someone has not first been resurrected, then can they only die? If they have already been resurrected, they are alive as Elohim is alive. Food for thought, something kind of interesting to think about. That I could see all the Baptists going, that's Gnostic. That's Gnostic. And then, their understanding of John chapter 3 is like the exact same thing, by the way, being born again. It's like the same thing. Being born again, guys, is very Gnostic. I say that kind of, facetiously. Hopefully you guys, my audience understands that by now. All right. And I saw this in the Phoenix, which is really fascinating, reminding me of these little boy bones. The Phoenix brings his own bones to that place, those that the torches surging and wrapped before by the pyre in that sheltering stead, and the ashes besides, then battle brave, he buries altogether bone and cinder on that island. Now, context here, this is dealing with the 500 years, the Phoenix coming and going. It's interesting. Some people have suggested that there are 2 phoenixes, which means he would come every 1,000 years. That's actually really an interesting thought, meaning there's a boy and a girl. But here the context is that the Phoenix comes, he dies, he's burned, there's bones and there's ashes, but the Phoenix resurrects, but the bones and ashes remain, and he takes his old body and he carries it, he or she, and carries the bones with him. And this is a example of our own resurrection, because you see this contextually. You jump forward to lines 509 through 513. I just read from 282 to 290 of the Phoenix, and it says, then in that revelatory hour, the fair and joyous symbol of that bird shall come into the light for all these men, when all that power shall be raised from the tombs. So get this. So it's saying that the Phoenix is going to arrive at some point in history that's going to line up with the resurrection of the dead, of the saints. They're going to arise from their tombs. Okay, we just got that. So we're thinking what? Their skull, their bones, meaty flesh is put back on? No. It says they gather up the bones and the body's limbs alike and the spirit of life before the knee of Christ. Okay, so it says right there, the dead rise, but their bones are still bones. Food for thought. I told you tonight that we're going to be looking at, I'm not even done yet. I haven't gotten to the most controversial part, by the way. But I told you we're going to be looking at old texts, and these are how people believed before the Protestant Reformation kind of, made anyone who didn't agree with the 5 points of the Protestant Reformation out to be a heretic. You can't question anymore or you're a heretic. But they had a very different belief. All right. Who were the wise men? The birth of Messiah in the book of Illuminators. I'm not going to read this whole thing. It's great. I read it before. I take that back. I said this last time. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to skip the first verse. The birth of Yahshua the Nazarite, who became our master and interpreter of Elohim and the Torah, a worthy vessel for the greatest manifestation of the power of the Ruach HaKodesh seen on earth, occurred in this manner. The book of the Illuminators needs no introduction for my audience. Most of you know it as the Book of the Nazarene. You know the reason I don't like to call it the Book of the Nazarene is explicitly because it confuses the historical gospel of the Nazarene, which this is not that. We have quotes from the Book of the Nazarene, or the gospel, I should say, none of which match up with this at all. Nevertheless, this is a book that was put out by the Nazarene. Some of you know as the Gospel Collide 2. It's a British book, and it is amazing. Love it, love it. I know you guys do too. About that time, Yochanan the Forerunner commenced teaching the way of the wilderness beside the Arden. And the year before Herod died, when Augustus Caesar ruled the Roman world, a babe was born. Now, this is very confusing here in the timeline, why John the Baptist is out starting his ministry the year that Messiah is born. It's like, wait, how does that line up? I actually think that my take on that is that that's maybe a kind of a textual issue, because this gives the same story about how his mother fled out to the wilderness. I'm not going to read it to you tonight for a lack of time, but it's the idea that he started his ministry as a baby. That's how I read it. Could be wrong, but I think he started his ministry. His father is murdered. He's out there with his mom. He's raised probably by the Qumran community. That there's hints to that in this book as well. And the father was Joseph, son of Heli, a carpenter of Galilee, and the mother Miriam, his wife, who had been a virgin pledged to Elohim in the temple by her father Shimon, son of Joachim, son of Nathan, son of Eliezer. Isn't that interesting there that people, they argue that Miriam could never have been pledged to the temple and never could have been raised to it. And it says it right there in a British book, a second source, boom, closed case as far as I'm concerned. Closed case. A decree had gone out that all who claimed kinship within the house of David should be gathered for enrollment at the city of David, called Bethlehem in Galilee. Therefore, Joseph, being rightfully born into the stock of David, took the scroll of his parentage and went to Bethlehem so his kinship could be established. Now Miriam, being then heavy with child, longed in her heart to be among her kinsmen, and she prevailed upon Joseph to take her, for Bethlehem was only a day's journey from them. This is a day's journey, but I showed you it's like 3 hours. Unless for some reason the roads were so bad back then. But, I don't know, a walk is a walk, The two with a servant came to Bethlehem at eventide, but because so many had gathered, the inns were filled. Then, as Miriam's time was close upon her after the journey, a man took pity on her and provided a cave used as a stable, and there the travelers found shelter and rest. I always find this whole story almost in some ways so messed up that imagine like you look out your window and you see. I don't know what your house looks like, but maybe you live in like by a field or in a suburban street or whatever, but you look out there and you see a pregnant woman in labor. Her water has broke and she's crying, trying to find someplace comfortable to have her child. And everyone is just like closing their blinds. Like there has to be in the situation. It's hard for me to imagine the situation that somebody's not breaking the Torah, that they're just totally ignoring this woman in need. And finally this guy comes along. He's like, yeah, I got this cave over here filled with cows. You can go stay in it. That's fine. All right, let's skip this here. But this is what I want to show you right here. Now, the stable was against a hill behind an inn where sages from the east were staying, men of Sestera, wise in the books of heaven, and of Nimrod. And one of the sages says, "It is strange indeed, for this child is born under no usual star." And these wise men, by the way, like they totally know what a planet is. All right, they by all like historical records, they knew what Venus was and Jupiter and so on and so forth, and Mars. This is not an aligning of planets. There is no text that seems to explicitly say that. What did they say? But under one that is a star in appearance only and not in nature, having a power not in other stars. Now, again, some people might say they're inferring planets. I don't see that here. They're looking. This is where again we have a Docetism in front of us. I'm about to explain in a few minutes what that is. They're even saying this star doesn't even. They're questioning whether this is really a star. It's something in the heavens. It's glorious. It's amazing. It has the appearance, but not in nature. It is not like the other stars. And he is destined for greatness and will motivate events touching the lives of all men. That's all I want to read in this text right here. But there you have it right there, Nimrod. And that's incredible coming from this book in Britain that they identified the wise men with Nimrod. I'm going to be showing you other... Now, when we read something like that, we're like, "Ooh, villain," Nimrod. that may not necessarily be so. These wise men may have been, and people are like, these are magicians and wizards and stuff like that. All historical evidence that we have doesn't say that. These may also have been righteous men. They may have been. And I'm going to show you a text tonight that says so. So let's keep looking. Okay, so this is one of the earliest references we have to the star over Bethlehem. This was written, the hymn for the Epiphany. It was written by Aurelius Clemens. He was a Roman Christian poet, and he was born in a Roman province in northern Spain in 348. Died 405, maybe 413, somewhere in there, according to the official timeline. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but he describes the star in this way. He says, "What means this star whose piercing rays outshine the sun's resplendent blaze? 'Tis token sure that God has come." He's describing this here is that this isn't just like outshining the moon. It's literally it's brighter than the sun. Now, somebody would be saying out there, well, if that were the case, then it would have been reported all through history. But I'm here to tell you that I don't think everybody saw it. I think that it was it's almost like a UFO sighting or something like that. I think it's one of those things that some people saw it, and it was chosen for some people to see, just like the shepherds in the field with the angels appearing to them. It wasn't chosen for everybody. He says, no courtier of the realms of night, nor monthly moon's bright acolyte. This star directs the course of day, sole sovereign of the heavenly way. Although the bears their track retrace, I think he's talking about the two bears in the north, nor the zodiac, nor wholly their clear beams efface. Yet oftentimes, neath the dun cloud's haze, they hide themselves from mortal gaze. What is he talking about here? He's saying that he's just saying that the stars are there, but during it's kind of a poetic way of saying when the sun is there in the daytime, that there's this hazy cloud that you can't see the stars, and so they are hid at that time, but not this star. He says, but yon star glory hath no end, nor to the depths can it descend. So when he's saying that, like, all the stars, they move down on the horizon, going down to the depths, this star does not. It's staying, it's kind of moving around. Even so, the sun comes up, the star is still there. The sun goes down, it's now nighttime, the moon comes up, the star is still there. And all the stars move over, and this star over Bethlehem is still there. What an incredible way. This is the first like in-depth analysis of the star that we have on record. It never is whelmed by envious cloud that seeks its beauty to enshroud. He's talking about the daytime there, right? So even in the daytime, you still see it. And then he talks a little bit about the wise men showing up. And I just want to show you this here. He says, the gift of gold, the king proclaims, the God, the fragrant incense names, the myrrh declares that death shall thrust within the tomb thy body's dust. So clearly that this poet, he clearly understood what the myrrh was for. And I'm just pointing this out because when the wise men, when they showed up, they knew, they were looking up at the gospel and the stars. I'm sure they understood the idea of the Messiah. And I think that they probably were. I really do think that they were probably very righteous men. If they weren't, if they were like evil wizards, witches or whatever, fine. I mean, I don't know why these guys would go so out of the way all across the world to give the reigning king these gifts in preparation for his own death and resurrection. And yet the people in Judah were like, yawn, not interested. Let's see what else I have here. Okay, now he talks about the babies. Let's see, where should I start reading this? Distraught, the tyrant base doth hear that now the King of Kings draws near to reign in David's seat of state and Israel's empire dominate. And this is talking about Herod here getting upset. Betrayed are we, he maddened cries. Our thrones usurper doth arise. Go, soldiers, go with sword in hand and slay all babes within my land. So this year now, maybe it's a, people are asked this question: how far did the slaughter go? Was it just in the city? We read earlier, I think it said like kind of greater Bethlehem. So what does that mean? Because Bethlehem borders up against Jerusalem. So I don't know. It seems like according to this, the slaughter was obviously, if we're dealing just with the city of Bethlehem, it's like what, 15, 20 babies maybe were killed. The Church of the Nativity shows much more than that. I think at least 100 or something. There's a lot there. But there you go. So spare no male child, each nurse's robe. You scrutinizing steel must probe. Spare not the suckling infant, though over mother's breast its life blood flow. On Bethlehem our suspicion falls, on every hearth within its walls, lest mothers with love's tender zeal some manly scion may conceal. So he's basically saying they're just, but he rip them from the bosom, kill them, throw them against the rocks, drive your sword into them. Horrible picture. But it does specify there that it was just the males and not the girls that were killed, like the bones that we see. So I'm not going to read all this, obviously. You guys can check that out for yourselves. This is where we first read about the gold, frankincense, and myrrh in the book of Adam and Eve. And this directs us to the Cave of Treasures. And the reason I'm reading this to you is that it's going to segue into the revelation of the Magi, which I want to read to you. After these things, Elohim said to Adam, you ask me for something from the garden to be comforted therewith. And I have given you these 3 tokens as a consolation to you, that you trust in me and in my covenant with you. And keep in mind, of course, Adam is the first Adam, kind of, poetic, right? And that it rhymes that these gifts were given to the second Adam, these very same gifts. So these, this gold, frankincense, and myrrh, according to Adam and Eve, came specifically from paradise. And these wise men, according to this tradition of these texts, they inherited them. They knew that these were descended from Adam and they had them in their possession. For I will come and save you, and kings shall bring me when in the flesh gold, incense, and myrrh. Gold as a token of my kingdom, incense as a token of my divinity, and myrrh as a token of my suffering and of my death. But, O Adam, put these by you in the cave, the gold that it may shed light over you by night, the incense that you smell its sweet savor, and the myrrh to comfort you in your sorrow. That comes from Adam and Eve. And of course, you can see that backed up right there. And how am I doing, guys? Am I freezing up on you guys? I see my internet bars are really low on my end, so I'm not reading the comments. If I am freezing up, I can fix this right now. I'm just looking here. Is anybody saying this? No? Okay. Polly, I'm not sure who that person is. Says there were 144,000 killed. Okay. All right. Well, you can see here, Cave of Treasures. It backs up this whole idea of that there was an actual cave that Adam and Eve lived in, that this gold, frankincense, and myrrh went into, and this was passed down to the wise men. I'm going to get back to this if there's time and ask if it's a repeated event, just for lack of time. All right, let's start talking about Docetism, and it could be Docetism, but I'm using a hard C here, so because I like my hard C's. Docetism and the Star of Bethlehem. So what is Docetism? And actually this picture right here describes it very well, where it shows the whole cosmos in the body of Yahshua as he's hanging from the tree. So I'm pulling this from Wikipedia. In the history of Christianity, Docetism was the doctrine that the phenomenon of Jesus, his historical and bodily existence, and above all the human form of Jesus, was mere semblance without any true reality. Now, the way they frame this is not very attractive. They're kind of framing this in a very Gnostic sense that, that his physical body was an illusion. I'm going to that's where I told you, I warned you earlier that this is going to sound really like, your alarms are going to go off with this. But when I show you some of the text, I think you're going to be like, okay, yeah, I've been reading those texts for a long time and it's not as scary as it sounds. So broadly, it is taken as the belief that Jesus only seemed to be human and that his human form was an illusion. And I already hinted at that with the Star of Bethlehem. The word docetai, or illusionist, referring to early groups who denied Jesus's humanity, first occurred in a letter by Bishop Serapion of Antioch in 197 through 203. We already have texts that apparently, obviously this couldn't have been the first letter, the first surviving letter, but these texts were around since the 1st century. So we're going into the 3rd century by this point. Who discovered the doctrine in the Gospel of Peter. Dun, dun, dun. I searched for that when I wrote a whole book of commentary on the Gospel of Peter, and clearly we don't have the whole gospel anymore. We just have like one chapter from it. And that one chapter is amazing. During a pastoral visit to a Christian community. So he shows up, and this Christian community is doing a Bible study on the Gospel of Peter, which is awesome. And he's just like freaking out. This is like not his theology in his denomination. So he's going to condemn it. Religious people are really, really good at this, making a public spectacle of these people that, how dare they read from this book that I don't accept. It appears to have arisen over theological contentions concerning the meaning figurative or literal of a sentence from the Gospel of John. The word was made flesh. Docetism was unequivocally rejected at the First Council of Nicaea in 325, and is regarded as heretical by the Catholic Church, Eastern Orthodox Church, Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria, Armenian Apostolic Church, Ethiopian Orthodox Church. I think that pretty much covers all of them. And don't forget, many Protestant denominations. Wait, many? I would think all Protestant denominations. What do you mean many? There's some that accept it. I don't think that's true. I think all Protestantism probably denounces it. As such as Calvinists, of course, the Calvinists would. Reformed Baptists, of course. I mean, they should be on the first of the list, even before the Orthodox and Catholic. That the Baptists should be first on this, and the all Trinitarian Christians reject what I'm about to show you. Okay, so and keep in mind that we're now going to time travel back to the best of our ability to the first couple centuries of Christianity and showing you their text, what they were passing around. The star in Revelation of the Magi. So let's start. Okay. All right. Documents frozen. Here's what I'm going to do. I find this works every time. I'm going to jump out of the studio. Hang with me, everybody. It's kind of scary because I might not get back in. You might see a black screen, but give me a minute. I'll be right back, guys. All right, I'm back. Yeah, we need the finger wag, Jenna. Thank you for telling me, Jenna, that I'm frozen. All right, let me bring this back up. Hopefully I'm doing good. I found that we're finding, Jenna found this last night as well when my co-host, when she came on, that it only gives me like an hour. It gives me an hour. Actually, we're going on, I think, close to 2 hours at this point, and then it starts acting up. So I may just have to remind myself in Europe as I go through it, every hour, if I'm going to go over it, I'm just going to boot myself out and come back on you guys. So hopefully it wasn't frozen too long. I appreciate my wife walked up 3 stories. I'm up in the attic up here to let me know. All right, this is what it says. And then when the time and fulfillment of what was written in the books happened concerning the revelation of the light of the hidden star, we were indeed thought worthy for it to come in our days and to receive it with joy. Now, keep in mind, these are the wise men narrating this. as we were commanded by our fathers, and as we ourselves read in the books. And each of us saw wondrous and diverse visions that were never before seen by us, and their mysteries were in these books that we were reading. And each one came from his dwelling place according to our ancient custom to ascend the mountain of victories, to wash in the spring of purification as we were accustomed. And we saw in the form of its ineffable pillar of light descending, and it came to rest above the water. And we were afraid and shook when we saw it. And we cannot speak about the brilliance of the star of light, since its radiance was many times greater than the sun. How many times have we read that tonight? And the sun could not stand out before the light of its rays. And just like the moon looks in the daytime in the days of Nisan, when the sun rises and it is absorbed in its light, so also did the sun seem to us when the sun rose over us, or when the star rose over us. And the light of the star, which surpassed the sun, appeared to us ourselves and the sons of our mysteries, but it did not appear to anyone else. There it is right there. There's the key, right? This is why everyone wonders why it's not in the history books. Now, personally, I think when this book was written, if this book is a forgery, I really don't think they wrote this whole book just to explain why nobody saw it. All right. I don't even know if that was on their mind at the time, but it is really interesting from the wise men's perspective. If this book has any legitimacy to it, that they were the only ones to see it. Makes a lot of sense to me, because they were removed from its mysteries and its coming. And we rejoiced and glorified and gave unmeasured thanks to the Father of heavenly majesty that it appeared in our days, and we were thought worthy to see it. And we bathed in the spring of purification with joy and ascended the mountain of victories, as we were accustomed. And we went up and found the pillar of light in front of the cave. Again, a great fear came upon us, and we knelt upon our knees, and we stretched out our hands according to our ancient custom, and we praised in silence the vision of its wonders. And again, we saw that heaven had been opened like a great gate, and men of glory carrying the star of light upon their hands. And they descended and stood upon the pillar of light, and the entire mountain was filled by its light, which cannot be uttered by the mouth of humanity. And someone like the hand of a small person drawn near in our eyes from the pillar and the star at which we could not look, and it comforted us. And we saw the star enter the cave of treasures of hidden mysteries, and the cave shone beyond measure. And a humble and kind voice made itself heard by us, which called out and said to us, "Enter inside without doubt, in love, and see a great and amazing vision." And we were encouraged and comforted by the message of the voice. And we entered being afraid, and we bowed our knees at the mouth of the cave because of the very abundance of the light. And when we rose at its command, we lifted our eyes and saw that light, which is unspeakable by the mouth of human beings. And when it had concentrated itself, it appeared to us in the bodily form of a small and humble human. Boom. All right. So right here, I told you before that like it's kind of like an orb, and we know that I think my listeners, we know that stars are conscious divine beings. They sing, they speak, they move if they want, if it's the Oswell. And he said to us, "Peace to you, sons of my hidden mysteries." And again, we were astonished by the vision. And he said to us, "Do not doubt the vision that you have seen, that there has appeared to you that ineffable light of the voice of the hidden Father of heavenly majesty." And again, do not doubt that it appeared to you to concentrate its light in its rays, or that is appeared to you in the form of a small, humble, and unworthy human, because indeed the inhabitants of the world cannot bear to see the glory of the only Son of the Father of majesty, unless it appeared to them in the form of their world. Right there, Docetism. Boom, right there. So it's basically saying that, and this is what we see in the Transfiguration, where Yahshua just like this light, just this radiance just explodes from within him, and he becomes this glorious being, right? That is what they're saying, is that that is truly who he is. But the world couldn't handle that light. And so he was in the form of a human. Revelation of the Magi 11 through 13. Here it is again. I'll read a couple more passages. This comes from chapter 14 of the Revelation. "And each of us was speaking about the revelations of visions that appeared to him in the cave of treasures of hidden mysteries. But our visions did not resemble each other in all the wonders of many forms that appeared to us." Now, that's one of the things with Docetism that we're going to see, that you could take 3 or 4 different people you could look at the same thing and they're all going to see something else. There is one of us saying, I saw a light in which there were many images that were amazing. And there is one saying, I saw an infant who had unspeakable forms. And there is one saying, I saw a youth who did not have a form in this world. And there was one saying, I saw a human being who was humble, unsightly in appearance, and poor. And there is one saying, I saw a cross and a person of light who hung upon it, taking away the sins of the entire world. And there is one saying, I saw that he went down to Sheol with force, and all the dead rose and worshipped him. And there is one saying, by the way, I've already lost count of how many are talking here. According to this account, there are more than 3 wise men. There are like 12 or 13 or something like that. Unfortunately, we don't have time for me to go through the kind of the Mandela effect and different traditions of the wise men, but this is interesting that this is not the traditional 3 wise men perspective. These are many of them. Another one said, I saw that he ascended in glory, and he opened graves, and he raised up the dead while they are crying out and saying, holy is our king, and holy is his descent to us because of our sins, and he humbled himself to save us. And another said, I saw him ascending to the heavenly height, and the angels opening the gates of heaven before him, and clouds of seraphs and angels are taking him upon the palms of their hands, and the Ruach taking a diadem and a crown and making victory shine before him, and all the hosts praising and singing the honor of his humility, which prevailed in the whole struggle of error and death. That comes from chapter 14. Now, quickly reading a glimpse of chapter 21. Therefore, rise and go in peace. Again, I am with you in all visions and signs, just as I am with you from the first day. For just as I am in sight in all forms here. So it's, remember when I showed the earlier tonight, the like the science fiction effect of Jacob is in the cave and he's seeing all the time itself stand still. It's almost kind of, this is almost like another science fiction effect where it's saying that you cannot basically this is Yahuwah himself coming into human form, and according to this, you can't contain him as a child or a teenager or an adult, a baby, whatever. He's all of these things at the same time. And behold, you are amazed by all the visions and forms in which you see me. I am also with the Father of Majesty, whose will I am since the world began, and I am never separated from you nor from the presence of the Father, because I am a ray of his light, and I was sent to you to enlighten you. And behold, you are amazed as frail human beings. How much more when I have come to you in the majesty of my Father? As for you not being able to stand before me, neither could the angels and powers that are above you when I descended upon them. And they saw a vision of wonders and stood in fear and trembling. Even as it was fitting for them, I appeared to them, and for you I appeared as you were able to see. Revelation of the Magi. All right, so let's look at different books now that have the same kind of idea that Yahshua is so much more greater than this cave. Like the cave could not hold him, the baby could not hold him. At no time, he was so glorious that, you know, at no time could it be held by just his fleshly restraints. So this is the Acts of Kepha, Acts of Peter. You know, and I've given my opinion on these books. I have a book of collections of all the different additional acts. I call it Ma'asim, the continued acts of the apostles. And I've given my opinion on this, that some of them have amazing, there's some serious gems in these. I think that they would have been written by, after they had died, by those who maybe knew them, or maybe like the grandchildren, right? Their stories are being passed down, and they're trying to document them in books before they're lost. Obviously the first century was kind of a chaotic time, and I think maybe things slowed down for a little bit where people could pick up the pen and write this stuff down. So the first here is, Kepha is talking to these 3 women. So this would be Peter, of course. And when all had prayed, the hall wherein they were shown, as when it lightened, even with such a light as cometh in the clouds, yet not such a light as that of the daytime, but unspeakable and visible, such as no man can describe, even such that we were beside ourselves with bewilderment, calling on Adonai, saying, have mercy, Adonai, upon us your servants what we were able to bear, that Adonai give thou us. For this we can neither see nor endure. This is this bright light that appears to these women. And as we lay there, only those windows stood up which were blind, and the bright light which appeared unto us entered into their eyes and made them to see. Now, and so Kepha said, tell us what you saw. And they said, we saw an old man of such comeliness as we are not able to declare to thee. But others said, we saw a young man, and others, we saw a boy touching our eyes delicately, and so were our eyes opened. That comes from chapter 21 of Kepha. Then in the Acts of Kepha and Andrew, or Andre, we read this. And Yahshua appeared in the form of a little child and greeted them and told them to go to the city of the barbarians and promised to be with them, and left them. Now, I know some of you are hearing this for the first time tonight, and you're like, this is weird. I mean, this goes completely out of our not just 21st century, but just Protestant mindset, right? Like Yahshua is never described to us in this way. But there's a lot of early texts that I'm finding, very early Christian texts, where they're claiming that Yahshua would appear to them as a child. So you don't have to like it, but it is what it is. It's what it was their worldview. Acts of Kepha says this. I'm not sure I'm going to read this whole thing here. I think it's a ship captain. He's sailing to Rome with Kepha. Kepha's going to go and confront Simon Magus. And let's see, what does it say? Whatever. We'll just skip that. It's the same thing. He sees him as a child, Yahshua as a child. Acts of Andre and Mattathiyahu says this. When 27 days had elapsed, Adonai appeared to Andre in the country where he was teaching and said, oh man, I got the wrong passage. Whatever. It should be one before this. It said he appeared as a child. I just botched that. In 3 days, Mattathiyahu is to be slain by the man-eaters. Go and deliver him. All right. Anyways, yeah, he appeared as a child there, but whatever. All right. Now let's go over a few books that are a little bit more known to my audience. This would be the Ascension of Isaiah. I read from this one a lot. And it flips the narrative. So yes, Yahshua is greater than his flesh, but so is the Antichrist. All right. So it says this. And now Hezekiah, I think that's Hezekiah there, and Yosab, my son, these are the days of the, Yechezkiyahu and Yosab, my son. These are the days of the completion of the world. Now, this is specifically talking about Nero. After it is consummated, Beliar, the great ruler, speaking of Hasatan, the king of this world, will descend from his place in the right below the firmament. And that's the context here. Who hath ruled it since it came into being. Yea, he will descend from his firmament in the likeness of a man, a lawless king, the slayer of his mother, who himself even this king. So it says two things. One is that it is somehow, it seems to imply that Nero does come back from the dead somehow, because it says there that it is this king. And secondly, that he will be in the appearance, Hasatan will be in the appearance of Nero. And this goes into one of the number one that I can find conspiracy theories of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd century of Christianity, where they all believe that Nero didn't really die, that it was a hoax, it was a stage hoax. Either that or that he was going to somehow come back, resurrect. This one comes from the Apocalypse of Eliyahu. That would be Elijah. And once again, it's dealing with the Antichrist. For behold, I will tell you his signs so that you might know him. Speaking of the Antichrist, he is of a skinny-legged young lad, having a tuft of gray hair at the front of his bald head. His eyebrows will reach to his ears. There is a leprous bare spot on the front of his hands, which is really fascinating. He will transform himself in the presence of those who see him. Now get this. He will become a young child. He will become old. He will transform himself in every sign. That's Docetism right there, meaning that he's greater than all those things. But the signs of his head will not be able to change. Therein you will know that he is the son of lawlessness. kind of a weird passage, but fascinating all the same. The Apocalypse of Elijah. That's another first century text, by the way. One I need to do more studies on. Going back to the ascension of Yeshayahu, we see that the gods of that world, the God of that world, or the Elohim of that world, will stretch forth his hand against the sun, and they will crucify him on a tree and will slay him, not knowing who he is. And thus his descent, as you will see, will be hidden even from the heavens, so that it will not be known who he is. Now, the context here is most of you know, maybe some of you are like, I'm getting it now. I'm starting to get it. Is Yahshua, he goes from the seventh heaven, the seventh firmament, he goes down to the sixth and the fifth. They all know who he is. But when he goes down to the fourth, he changes his form to be less glorious. They don't know who he is. He goes down to third, second, first. He keeps doing that. And he goes underneath the firmament and he changes his form to kind of look like them. And they don't even look twice at him. They don't think anything of him. But truly, he is the glorious, even though he's changing his form to be less and less till he finally gets to the form of a baby. He is actually the glorious Yahweh in the highest of heavens. That's what this is right here, the ascensions of Yeshayahu. Let's see, what else do I have to read here? You can see here, I'll kind of just go through this highlighted stuff. I just explained. He goes from the sixth. I just explained this. Just went over it for you. I've been over this so many times. I'm on a closed shop tonight. Yeah, I'm going to close shop right there. So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. And I want to show this really quickly. We're coming so close. It's the end of the month, everybody. And, my family, we're completely dependent on you guys. Pamela's dependent. Rebecca's completely dependent. And thank you all for your generosity. I just ask that, you continue to pray and seek Yah if you could be, if he would have you be ministry supporters, ministry investors in what we're doing and getting these books out and this research out. And I want to keep doing this week. I love my job, guys. I love this so much. I devote just so much time to this, writing reports and presenting them. So I think that's it for tonight. Oh yeah. For those of you who are listening right now, I see that there is a certain amount of people that I would love every single one of you guys, to show up tonight for our after party, starting in just about 45 minutes. We're going to be on Discord, having a roundtable conversation. Anything goes, question time. You guys can talk about whatever you guys want. I'll just be there to listen, respond if you wish. And good night, everybody. Let's do this again. Now a word from our commercial sponsor.
I am sitting here with my vast hoard of wealth, my Blackbeard Creek spices. It's delicious and it's nutritious. You can get it from me and my vast hoard here, or you can get it online. What you can do is you can go to polyheart.com, click on the little Blackbeard icon there, right there. Or you can go to bit.ly/Blackbeard Creek. It'll take you to the Unexpected Cosmology. Actually, what I'm working on now is I'm super excited. I'm making a flyer. It's going to go next door at the Little Neck Shell gas station. We are testing it there, and we're going to get a lot of reviews. I'm at the Dairy Queen now next door. We are selling Blackbeard Creek for much less than $16, which is at the store now. So come get your awesome sample. Don't know the price yet. Maybe as low as half. Who knows? Anyway, Polyheart signing off. Come get your Blackbeard Creek original seasoning now.